Phone goes off. All right. We are live, I think. Maybe. No,
Yep.
my
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
looks
Okay.
like on my end, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm gonna set this up so I can see if anyone comments while we are talking here. It's like
Awesome.
4 or 5 steps. Oh, there we go. All right. So, as everyone knows, I'm Rachel. I decided to do a 21-day just holiday hopes and dreams, talking about different ways to cope and get through this holiday season. And I know that a big topic is isolation and figuring out how we can cope. But what we don't talk about a lot is how addiction and how substance use and how, well, any type of addiction, I feel like, can make it really challenging when we are so stressed out and when there's so many changes. And when that is our coping style or our old coping style, how we can find new ones. So I had the pleasure of meeting Rob when I worked at Nystrom, and he actually interviewed me
Oh,
about,
familiar.
yeah, about trauma. And you were actually the first person that popped in my mind when I thought about addiction. And I just remember our conversation that we were having before you interviewed me. And I just thought you would be a great person to talk about addictions and talk about how people can cope. So thank you so much for jumping on live with me.
Yeah, of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Happy to be here, and happy to be talking about something I'm very passionate about. So as you mentioned, addiction, getting sober on its own can be difficult, but during a pandemic, this has obviously made things even more challenging for folks in recovery. So yeah, I mean, happy to discuss sort of what I've personally done, what I know to be effective. Also, just some of the tools that I've learned. Sort of working in the field. You mentioned we used to work together. I now work for Drew Horowitz, Drew Horowitz and Associates. So he does intervention, sober coaching, sober companions, as well as sort of clinical transport. So really working a lot with families for folks who maybe initially aren't ready, to sort of take that first step, and need that additional, sort of nudge or intervention process. That being said, yeah, I mean, the pandemic has stripped away all the resources that we generally use. I mean, the one of the fundamental principles or ideas in recovery is connectedness, right? And that has been taken away. So the in-person meetings gone. The afterwards, the fellowship, if you will, sort of doing other fun things that I think is so important for folks to do when they get sober, so that they see there's life outside of drinking, using drugs, has been taken away. So yeah, happy to be here to talk about some ideas, some concepts, some tips, right, for staying sober sort of during the holidays and during a pandemic. So yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I was just talking to a client the other day about how that is so hard that they can't go to their AA meetings, like that in person. There's just something about being in person as you're trying to heal and figure out this new life, this new way of functioning, this new way of working through things. And they were just sharing with me how difficult that was and how, like, being on Zoom doesn't feel the same way, or they don't get that extra support after. Do you have any tips of how they can make that more manageable? Or
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I always like to get back to the basics a little bit. So pandemic living, and now even so with some more restrictions going into place, across the country in Minnesota for sure. Remembering some foundational things. Let's say you are working from home, which isn't the best for us, but even so, just making sure that you're taking care of yourself from the foundation of sleeping, making sure you're getting proper sleep. It's so easy if you're at home all the time to not, right, and to for your schedule to be thrown off. So focusing on sort of the basics, right? Sleeping, eating healthy, and exercise, right? Like if you do those three things, plus a lot of the other things we're talking about, but that is a foundation. It sounds so basic and so simple, but it is a staple to staying sober, right? And blood sugar is real. If you're eating sugar all the time and you're peaking and valleys and all that kind of stuff, it really can affect you. If you're not sleeping properly, you're just not thinking right. Exercise, so many studies about exercise and the effects that it can have on your mental health, obviously your body as well. So yeah, just foundational stuff I would say is super, super important. For me, I love getting outside. That's really, really important. I'm grounded in nature. I have a dog, so I get outside for walks quite a bit. But I believe that's important, especially time in a social distancing. I mean, even in Minnesota, I found that folks are, find a way to get outside even during the winter. I'm planning, I have a husky. I'm planning on doing some ski joring this winter for the very first time, which if you don't know what that is, your dog pulls you behind some cross-country
Oh,
skis. So never done it, first time, but I'm looking forward to it because it's like, hey, listen, I'm originally from the East Coast, I think and uh, we don't do that stuff back there. So I'm like, all right, well, we have to embrace it, right? So things we can control versus what we can't. I know we're going to talk about mindfulness as well and meditation because for me that's the game changer. But we can't control this pandemic right now, right? And that's something that a lot of us are taught. Getting sober, what you can control versus what you can't. But unfortunately, our minds can play tricks on us, especially during some isolation. So meditation for me is the game changer, right? Because what's the saying? Man's problems are all stem from the inability to sit in a room alone by him or herself, right? And we're sure finding that out right now.
mm-hmm.
Um, and in my experience, our thinking can be our biggest problem. And if we believe everything we think, and the negative self-talk and all those type of things, it can lead us down a bad path. So I could talk about meditation for some time. I know you're big on meditation and mindfulness as well, and yeah, I mean, it helped rewire my brain. I truly believe that. I've been sober 13 years, and uh,
Congratulations.
thank you,
Huge.
thank. Yeah, and yeah, I had a lot of negative self-talk even in several years sober, and not even realizing I had it until I sat alone in a room by myself, and I'm like, boy, this is uncomfortable, right? And so learning how to realize that it is just self-talk and I did a lot of positive affirmation meditations when I first started, and I had to be careful not to judge my meditation too. I think mindfulness or meditation specifically is I like the approach. Most people approach meditation incorrectly, right? So I encourage those folks out there, who are like, I'm not good at meditation. I'm awful at it. I can never get my brain to shut up, right? I encourage you to stop telling yourself that story because it is a story. Because with that approach, I promise you'll never be good at meditation.
I
Uh,
love that. Yes.
right?
So true.
And my I mean, nobody's brain totally shuts up all the time, right? Like I think we'd be dead if that was the case. And but it's about focusing on something else. Then there's the actual practical application of it.
Mhm.
uh, and then I'm sorry, the actual practice of it, and then the practical application. The practice of it can look many ways. We could talk about that for a while, I know. But and then the practical application, when those stories are running throughout the day that are not so positive, to be able to identify like these are thoughts, right? And I don't have to pay attention to them all. So
My
anyway.
favorite phrase is it's a thought is just a thought. An emotion is just an emotion. Like I can do so much more with it if I allow myself to separate myself from it. So I love mindfulness. I love meditation. Obviously I teach it a lot. And it always in my mind is like this conveyor belt of how can I just look at it objectively versus taking on that belief of I am a failure or I can't handle this. And I love that you said that like it's a myth that we tell ourselves that we can't do something, because we can do so much more than what we actually believe we can do. But the moment we tell ourselves we can't do it, we can't.
Amen. Yeah, I believe it. I would say, uh, you know, around the holidays specifically too, you know, some things for staying sober. I was taught this very early on, but again, sometimes you can forget it. You know, events are going to look differently this year. Some people might still have, whether you're watching this in Minnesota or not, you know, in Minnesota, we're not really supposed to have families outside of our homes, you know, for the holidays. And, you know, but let's say you are in a small capacity, socially distant, you know, make sure that, you know, make sure you mark your cup clearly, right? If you're, you know, alcohol is an issue for you, and everyone is drinking out of the same cups, and your cup happens to look like, you know, somebody else's, and you pick it up and drink it, it's not a situation you want to put yourself in. So I was taught that very early on. Practical tip: I was taught
Great tip.
to listen. I keep snacks with me everywhere I go. I happen to just love snacks and food. But I say it because, again, I mentioned the blood sugar thing, and, you know, you'll hear hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Like, don't ever get hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? Well, the hungry run is very real for me, and I learned it early on. I mean, even if it's just some almonds, you know, some gum, you know, a protein bar, something, I always have snacks with me, and especially if you're at a holiday party or something of that nature. And um, alcohol has a lot of sugar in it, right? And so if you're early in sobriety, you know, having, you know, I mean, they literally used to say, just make sure you keep candy on you, right? Because it can, you know, sort of solve that craving, and knowing that it's going to pass, right? Like, this all is going to pass, all of it. COVID will pass eventually. You know, your thoughts will pass eventually. Your feelings will, you know, will pass eventually. Like, this too shall pass. They say it all the time. And then also having an exit strategy if you are uncomfortable. You know, I drive myself to most holiday parties, again, sort of pre-COVID, but even so now, with families. I mean, families can be the emotional triggers for us, and, you know, because they installed those buttons, right? And so making sure if I'm going there, I can leave without being offensive or anything else. You know, just, hey, you know, I'm tired, I'm going to leave. You know, nobody's going to ask a question why if you want to go. So having an exit strategy, something, again, I was taught very early on, and especially during the holidays, during sort of COVID, any of these situations where if you feel uncomfortable and your natural old reaction was to drink or get high, you know, now it's, you know, let's implement these new tools, and I can physically leave, if I need to. So
How do you, so, because like I'm big into learning more about like eating addictions and other addictions. And I know that oftentimes what people share is that it's hard when those comments come back, like, well, why do you need to leave? Or I'm your family, you have to stay, or, you know, like more of those, like, why are you doing this? And you know, because for you, you just said that they won't question you because they know, it sounds like maybe you have that established with your friends and family already, that they know if you feel uncomfortable that that's what you do, or that that's what you need to do for yourself. How do you establish that? How do you work through that?
well, it's learning who you are, and that's a big portion of sobriety, is figuring out who the heck we are, what we like, what we don't like, establishing boundaries, and coming up with healthy boundaries and coping mechanisms with our families and friends. Right? I used to be afraid to say no to people. That's a very Minnesota thing, by the way. I would have fit right in. You know, I'm from the East Coast. I say it all the time. I'm super direct. You know, you're not going to have to guess what I'm thinking. I was not that way for a very long time. Here's a great example. When I first got sober, folks asked me, so, like, hey, we're going to go out to eat. Where do you want to go? Right? And listen, you could dissect this as many ways as you want, but you know, my reaction most of the time was, hey, wherever you want to go. Right? Oh, we're going to go see this movie. You know, You've Got Mail or something. I'm sort of aging myself, but anyway, you know,
That's a
like,
good movie.
yeah, you know, let's go, you want to go see it? And I'm like, oh, okay, great. You know, like, I don't want to see You've Got Mail, right? Like I know, like, yeah, I'm no
Sure.
offense, like, it
No, I
wasn't
don't take.
my, yeah, on my top list. And yes, I do have an opinion about where and what I want to eat. And so I had a guy that I'm a 12-step guy. I had a guy sponsor sort of early on. I invited him over for dinner. I said, hey, you have a choice of, some vegetables as a side. Which one would you like? And he said, whatever you want. I said, no, I want you to make a decision here, right? Stand up for yourself. It's okay. Like, make a decision. And he's like, I had corn or green beans, and I was going to make the corn. And he's like, Rob, I hate corn. Like, and I was just going to say yes. Right. So being able to figure out who we are, sort of empowering ourselves, and getting some confidence in saying no, and what other people think of us is none of our business, right? And unfortunately, that falls in the category of what we can control and what we can't, right? All we can control is our reaction to life. We can't control other people's reactions, and I feel like mindfulness helps with not letting other people's emotions dictate ours. So, if somebody else is upset, I don't have to be upset just because they are, right? I don't have to let it ruin my day. This is good self-care for me to be able to exit this party. I'm sorry if you're upset about it, but I'm not going to let it ruin my day.
I was just actually talking to a client about that, how it's so easy for us to take on other people's emotions, like when they're upset, taking it personal of like, I did something bad. But in reality, they're just upset because you said no, and no person likes the word no. Like I I was like, I don't like the word no. I like to get what I want. And I think that's just it's in our human nature to want something, right? And when we don't get it, our goal is blocked. And that's the biggest thing, is that when our goal is blocked, we get upset. And so if we can really recognize, like, their goal of XYZ was blocked, they're upset about the goal being blocked. It's not about me as an individual. They're just upset that they didn't get what they wanted.
Yeah, don't take it personally, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would also say now basic stuff, not, news overload, probably not healthy for anybody, especially folks in sobriety where a lot of times our brains are our biggest enemy, as I mentioned, and, can sort of spiral downward. Finding positive distractions, whatever that may be, new books, funny movies, get into cooking, whatever that may be, if it's healthy stuff, for you. But also gratitude and gratitude lists, I think are awesome. I actually keep one on my cell phone. So just sort of in my little note section. And then, it's really hard to be upset if we focus on the good, right? And I'm a big believer in what we focus on becomes our reality. If we focus on the negative all the time, that is going to be our, our reality. If we focus on the positive, things become a lot brighter, right? So even if it's just jotting down maybe 2 or 3 things as basic as roof over your head, food, something before you go to bed every night, or when you first wake up in the morning, I think is awesome. And another one would be helping or getting outside of yourself. In some capacity, helping others. I was taught early on that thinking about Rob could be a depressing topic, but Rob thinking about somebody else isn't so depressing. So go try to be of service and help somebody else. And so it could be as simple as a small text message asking how somebody's doing, and just seeing where it goes from there. A quick call, trying to see what I could bring to help in every situation, is a mindset that I've tried to take on, which has helped immensely. So
Well,
yeah.
especially in a time like this where you're probably not the only one feeling isolated or feeling these urges coming up, and even just reaching out to somebody else that has some similar struggles or might have other struggles, being able just to connect with them and not feel alone in that.
Amen. Yeah. I mean, listen, out of the 13 years I've been sober, this has been a challenging time, like no question. I've always sort of, the in-person meetings and sort of helping other people and, sort of the 12-step community in person has always been really big for me. So even those folks who are generally, solid right now, like this is challenging, but I've been through some wild stuff in my life. Some people here, a lot of people who are getting sober, they're very resilient people. So I would say to anybody watching, remember, like, you've been through worse than this. It's going to pass. It looks like good, again, good news is coming around a vaccine, hopefully soon, right? But never listen to the thoughts of your lowest moment, right? Reach out, call somebody, call, Rachel, call me. I will literally give you my phone number, to help be of service. And remember that I used to see reaching out for help as like, well, I don't want to inconvenience somebody. It might be really hard for them. They might be too busy. The stories we tell ourselves, right? Why we don't reach out for help. It's actually helping that person most of the time, right? By being of service to you. So I welcome phone calls. I welcome people to reach out to me. It will help me, right? Because I don't want to ever go back to where I was. 13 years ago. I'm a different human being. And by telling you a brief part of that, I hear it too, right? It's reiterated in my own brain. I hear myself say it. Words come out of my mouth. And so I get to remember, okay, this isn't where I ever want to go again. And so let me show you what I did to get here. So
I love that idea of like, it's not just about you calling out and reaching out for help is helping them as well. And that's so true. I mean, like that ability to help someone else out, and it's their job to tell you if they can't do it at that moment. Like it's their job to say like, hey, I'll call you back in an hour or two. I can't right now, but I will later, right? And if that person can't, there's so many other people to reach out to. So I think that's such a good message. You were saying earlier with that the program that you work at, and I would love if you are open to sharing that later here on the comments or whatnot, but what can we tell family members? So, like those that are saying, well, I want to help support this individual and they just relapsed. Like, how do I go call them? What do I do? And like, what can we do as family or as friends to support loved ones?
It's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it. There's a lot of resources for families as well. Online meetings. One thing, a lot of people are, again, online meetings are like, oh, well, online meetings aren't that great, and I've even said that out loud before. I can get easily distracted on a big online meeting, but guess what? There's smaller ones, and you can do fun things like going to meetings in different cities and meeting people in California. I've been to meetings in Boston. I spoke at a meeting in Nova Scotia. Like doing that, and families can do the same to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. A lot of treatment centers. In particular, I know Hazelden has done their family program is online, is I believe free at this point. A lot of Al-Anon meetings have moved online too. So making sure that they're taking care of themselves and supporting themselves the best way they can, so that they're supporting their loved one, I would say is probably the best advice I could give for families, is making sure that they're doing their own work. Again, reaching out to professionals if you have questions, if you need help. Calling you, calling me, calling somebody who's in the field who, hey, I'm not exactly sure what to do, or again, just taking care of themselves and using the available tools that are out there. So again, I can share some of those, sort of in the comment section or something like that. But there's a lot of free tools for families now that otherwise weren't available before, and some folks don't know that. So yeah.
I know we can talk like all day about this, and I probably would keep talking. I think, I would love those resources if we can share those with people. But also just like if there's family members or friends that are looking for that, what I have found is it's not helpful to like point out the problem right away. Like, why are you drinking? Why are you doing this? What? I don't know. Does that usually feel good or?
Yeah, no, definitely not. If people are pointing the finger, they say sort of the Al-Anon or Nar-Anon handshake is a finger wag, right? Them sort of pointing out the issue as opposed to putting the disease in the center of the room. They put their loved one in the center of the room, and oftentimes folks forget. We are dealing with a chronic progressive disease here, and unfortunately, the behaviors that are associated with it oftentimes aren't great, right? But family members, I mean, I've had struggles with some of my own family where folks forget, like, hey, you are dealing with a sick individual. Would you treat somebody who had cancer that way? Unfortunately, the behavior associated with addiction is one that is not very pretty often. But remembering and educating themselves about the addiction part, again, I think is imperative.
So educating themselves on like how to treat that person as a human.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, cool. Well, I would love those resources. Again, I just truly appreciate you jumping on. We already have comments of that. This is so good to hear. I think I know a lot of my friends have struggles in that area, and I'm sure that you are just connecting with a lot of people with you just coming on. So I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Listen, it's great to see you. I don't even know if you and I have physically met in person, but I feel like I know
Have
you
it.
really, really well. Yeah. So we've connected a lot during the pandemic via Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So there's an example of how we can connect with folks. Thanks again for having me.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna turn this off here.